Okay, everybody, welcome to week 8, and this is actually the first lesson or session on grant writing. I'm going to cover basically what we're going to review for the next few weeks and what will be required on your mock project. So as we begin the grant writing process, it is very unique in our field. For one thing, we're very passionate about what we do, but we often don't have the research or the evidence to produce the results that maybe funders are looking for. So it's really good for you to kind of get an idea of the information you'll need to capture and how you can be supportive if you're not a grant writer, if you're in a center where they have someone who can write the grants, and understanding the principles and the different pieces of the grant process will help you be supportive of your center as they develop these funds. So you will want to read this week in your Storytelling for Grant Seekers book, the first 64 pages. Also, you will have a worksheet that you'll have to complete that will be the finding possible funders. My desire in these worksheets are helping you to get through all the elements of a grant proposal. So when you put together that final part of the mock project, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here, you will have all the information that you just need to collect and put into place. So I have prepared basically a little paper here with links, page with links that you can kind of examine and explore some different funders, and you're supposed to create a worksheet of 5 potential funders that you think would match the goals and the objectives of your mock center. After you have found those 5, and I've also given a sample there so you can look at my sample, then I have for you down on the assignments a worksheet where you will complete and select one of those funders and complete this worksheet, seeing how you align with their funding requirements. So what is the funder's goal and mission? What are their limitations or requirements of the funding? And then how could you, as an organization, partner with them so you'd be a great match that they could want to give you money because you would accomplish what they desire for their funds. So those are the assignments that are due this week. You also have a discussion forum that I threw in there, a discussion topic on crowdfunding. There's a video. If you follow this link, the video will give you an opportunity to kind of listen to this guy talking about the ins and outs of some innovative funding. And I just want to know your thoughts on it and what you think. Would this work? Could you see this working? You might be the person in your center that could make this happen. All of these assignments, as with the other worksheet assignments that will happen in the next 4 weeks, will help you create that final narrative for your mock project. So as you look at that link, here are some requirements or pieces of the narrative. You'll create an opening statement. You'll kind of lay out in a few paragraphs the organizational background, and then we'll spend quite a bit of time on statement of need that you'll have to write to the need that your program or your center can meet, and why an organization such as yours should exist and how it makes a difference in the community. And then also within the statement of need, you'll look at your goals and objectives in order to deliver your services or your funding requirements, and then the budget and the timeline for completion. So we'll work on the pieces of this, and each week I will explain more, and you'll have an opportunity to work on the worksheets, and questions will come up and we'll work through this. But let's start with an overview. Today I just kind of want to paint the big picture, and that's found in our PowerPoint here, of what are grants and why do we write them, and what's the benefit of even thinking about this as an EAP professional. So when I talk to centers or if I present at a regional conference and they want to know more about grant writing, I always start with the question, do you have enough money to do all that you want to do? And always it comes up people saying no. So one of the first thing I have them do is look at the constraints. Constraints is a term that comes up in the vocab of grant writing, but simply means what are the problems, what are the limitations that keep your center doing the things that they should do to make a difference. Those everyday nagging problems. It's very easy for EAT professionals to talk about the problems. You know, will they have enough money to feed their herd? Do they have enough volunteers to ride all the riders that they need to ride? Is a horse sick? Are they going to have money to pay the vet? Those are the constant constraints. Or our arena needs to be heated so we could, you know, deliver services year round. Everybody can function very well looking at their problems because it's our daily grind. Then I challenge people, and I'm going to challenge you. If resources were unlimited, you had all the money, all the time, and all the space you needed to do what you needed to accomplish in this field, what would you do? Usually, this takes a little more work for people to think about. It's difficult for us to dream because we live in the daily grind. But think about what things would you want to accomplish if resources weren't an issue? You know, would you put a roof over your arena so you have a covered arena? Maybe you would expand and provide after-school services and partner with the schools. When you start dreaming, you actually can begin to lay the foundation to bridge the grant solution format. So in between constraints and that unlimited resources is this kind of blue zone, or I call the grant solution zone. Really, if you think of grants in a way that they are an opportunity to fund solutions to your problems, you're more likely to get one awarded. That really is a great context to put the whole funding process together in. So I am just simply going to go over why write grants, who should write the grants, what are grants and what should they look like, and then the steps of how do we make that happen in the EAT Center. So when you think about where funds come for an EAT organization, most centers will usually have a big gala or one-time big event that they pour all their energy in and they hope that they will raise the funds that they need. While that is true, often those events cost a lot of money to put on. You know, you have to rent the facility, you have to, you know, bring in music, you have to, you know, recruit if they do a silent auction and set that up and pay for the meal. They become very expensive, and so yes, they may raise 20 to 30,000, but it could cost them 15,000 to put it together, you know, depending on the extravagance of that event. Other centers, they survive on what I call the bread and butter donations, those small monthly donations that Grandma Sally, you know, contributes $10 every month so her grandchildren can have services. Grant writing is just another way to diversify your funding base. It also can be kind of a low cost option too. Now, if you hired a grant writer, you might have some costs there. But if you think about it, if you put together and pull together the elements to make application, it's really just time. The time to gather the information and to write the narrative and then begin making the applications to the different foundations and agencies that would give funding to. It's not a big expense, and if you're awarded, it's a great profit margin. Another thing that I think is very important for centers to understand is that grants and the grant writing process can really take your center to a new level of professionalism. You know, for the first time, a center might be stepping into a state level um, viewpoint or arena or a federal arena. And so the things that are required of your program as far as the expertise in your staff, the quality of website and literature that you put out, it can really step up that professionalism that you can put on a good image to potential funders. And then the other important thing that I think grant writing can bring to the table is that grants are funded when you collaborate with others. So collaboration is key. I think centers tend to isolate themselves and think they're the only one that can do this, and they don't understand the importance of leveraging working together. So grants are a great opportunity to pursue a project that could be a win-win for other centers and you in the area. So who can write those grants? Yes, you can hire a grant writer. That is a good possibility. You can also recruit someone on your board that maybe has experience or a background in writing grants or even just an interest. But whether you do either of those things, you're going to have to develop a team. The best grant is written with all stakeholders in mind. You want to involve the instructors, the director, the barn manager, even parents, volunteers. You just want to involve everybody. The last thing you want to do is to spend the time to develop a grant and then get funded and then have money that you're obligated to produce an end result that you're not even interested in doing. Good example of this, I was hired as a program coordinator at a university, and we had a $1.4 million Department of Commerce grants where they were to deliver computer literacy training. Unfortunately, a great, qualified, amazing team of grant writers put that grant together, but they failed to understand what does it look like to deliver the services. And what happened is that grant becomes, as you submit it, the statement of work. And they were held to the statement of work that it wasn't even humanly possible to accomplish what they originally thought they could accomplish in that grant. You don't want to get into that situation. It's very stressful. You want to make sure that you write grants and go after funding, that it's something in the end that you really want to do and that it supports the mission of your organization. Grant teams need to meet often. You have to plan ahead. I'm going to talk about creating a master narrative, but even after that information is collected and organized, you're still going to have to look at deadlines and work together to kind of finalize the grant process to have it ready in time. So what? When you're thinking about what a grant is, the first thing you need to know is yourself. You need to know who you are as an organization. What are your strengths? What can you do that nobody around you can do? That's your distinctive. You need to know your limitations. What will you not be able to do? If you see funding and you want to go after money to provide a vaulting program, but you have no vaulting horses, you have no vaulting instructor, you actually have no knowledge of putting together vaulting, it's going to be a big challenge for you. So you really need to work within who you are and what you do well, and then also look at what could you do better. What do you have the foundation of to provide services in a certain direction that you could build on and go ahead and maybe have a development grant to help you explore some of these new areas. Also, you need to understand and know the field of equine assisted activities and therapies. You need to have a really good understanding of what is the most current research in our field. What is the evidence that's coming from that research? What are the gaps in the literature? What could you address that could make a difference in this field? And then also what's happening in your state and region. if there's not a lot of programs serving veterans in your state and region, you have a really good capacity to perhaps get some new program development money through a grant to help offer that services. Just remember that problem zone is a solution zone, and that can truly be an opportunity for you to secure funds. When funders look at grant proposals, they're always asking the question, is this reproducible? Could another like center, another EAT center, do the same thing by following the same steps? And then does it contribute to the greater field? If you, I wrote a grant and it's really, was really important. It was based on the gap in the field as far as having standardized curriculum. And so the whole focus was to get money to develop this standardized curriculum to have a measurable, reproducible, consistent way to help veterans develop horsemanship skills. That was very fundable. Those principles, that curriculum can be used for a variety of different centers and then also have the same result. The funder saw that as a really good investment. That was advancing the field and it would help many centers accomplish the same goals. So how? We're going to start, and that's what you're going to do this week, is research funders. You're going to need to look at what funders match what you do and would be most likely to give money to you. And then you need to create a plan. So as you develop your list of prospective funders, there's going to be deadlines, there's going to be requirements. You also then have to have some proposal ideas. Grants come in all shapes and sizes. Very few grants are towards capital improvements, so you're not probably going to get money to build anything. However, I wrote a grant for $5,000 for one center from the Home Depot Foundation, and the purpose was to renovate our classroom and our kitchen area in preparation to start our veterans program. And so they provided all the materials for us to do that renovation. So that really was a kind of a bricks and mortar in a sense that it was a facility improvement. A lot of times grants are geared toward program ideas. So it might be funding for an existing program, say it's your adaptive writing program, or maybe it's your hippotherapy program, or it could be a literacy program, or it could be funding to help you start new programs. Maybe you do want to have some funding to do that after school combination partnership with the schools for at-risk youth. They're either a project or they're a program, are the most likely sources that you will find grants to fund. And then you're going to prepare a master document, and I'm going to go through the steps and what that looks like. Then you'll also want to look for other groups that you can partner with. And as you identify possible partners, you're going to need to have a letter of support from them. And we'll talk more about that later too. One good thing, though, is you're trying to figure out who's going to fund me. Learn from others who have been funded. Go out on the website, look at other centers, see who they're being funded by. When you receive a large grant, a center has to post and advertise that, this is funds that have been received by the United Way, or this is some funds that have been received by a grant from an AmeriCorps position. We have to identify the partnership with these funding sources, and as you look at other centers, you can find that information and then go after that foundation and see maybe they might want to give funds to you as well. So find those other funding sources through like situations. So the elements of a master proposal, and this is what you'll be doing for your mock project, and we're going to break this down and look at each of these elements in the weeks to come. So it begins with that abstract or that introduction. You will have a statement of need. You will have to spend time writing about the organizational background and some of its history, who funded it, who founded it, where did it start? Also, other funders that contribute. Where does the funding sources come from that keeps the daily operational costs going for that center? Then you're going to speak to your project. It may require you to give the project a name, or it may require you to give the program a name. And then you'll also have to list goals and objectives. You will have to list your methods and a timeline. You'll have to give a budget. That budget, each of those items will have to tie back to those objectives. And then how will this be sustainable? If the funding goes away, this foundation is only going to fund you for 1 year, do you have other sources of funding that will continue it, or will it go away when the funding goes away? That's not what funders want to see. They want to see that you have a sustainability plan, that you can keep this going. They're just helping you get a jump start. Do you have a way to assess and evaluate your progress? How do you know all this money is going to make a difference when you start this program? And then also you will have to list the qualifications of the staff. So, what are some of the reasons grants are not funded? The biggest reason is people just don't apply. I know a few years ago when I was preparing to do a workshop on grant funding in Oklahoma for the Regional PATH Conference, I started looking at some of the funder databases and seeing who has been receiving funds in Oklahoma, and we were not applying for them. Very few of the centers were seeking any type of funding opportunity in the grants process. Also, if you do not understand what the funder likes to give money for, you are not going to receive funds. You need to do your homework and really know that funder and know what are their limitations, what are their requirements, so that you make your effort worthwhile and you make their effort worthwhile. If your program or your project has a very unclear purpose and it's very difficult for a funder to see how their input or their investment will make a difference, they're not likely to fund you. And of course, if there's no evaluation process or collaboration with others, if it's not reproducible, if it's unsustainable, poorly written, I find a lot of centers give up too early. Usually, if I don't get funded the first round, but we're a really strong match, a funder may set you aside and say, I really have the quota of the number of centers that I can give funds to or grants I can award. I'm going to hang on to them because this is a really good match. Sure hope they will apply next year. And then if a center gives up and they've been set aside to take a closer look for the next year, you've missed that opportunity. So it's really important not to give up too quickly. And then one of the biggest factors that grants are not funded is their personnel are not qualified. It's really important you have the appropriate people with the appropriate certifications on the right seat on the bus, that you have those people doing the things that they should be doing based on their experience and their qualifications. It may be that they're volunteer positions, but still they need to be qualified. Unless you're writing a grant and they're out there, it's a training and professional development grant. That might be the best place to start. Saying, what, we have a staff that are not underqualified and they just haven't had a lot of training opportunities. Maybe that's the first type of grant to go after, is a training and professional development grant. I put this slide in here because this is really kind of a good way to work through the grant process, especially in developing whether it's going to be a project or it's going to be a new program, or if it's an existing program that you're trying to address some strategic problems with. You start with that problem statement, that solution that you need to come up with in order to secure funds for. And then as you look at that solution, say you need to increase your volunteers, and so your goal is to hire and develop a volunteer recruitment specialist and develop a comprehensive volunteer training program. And then you would have to support it with the rationale. And think about assumptions would be, so if we had this program going and we had that person plugged into that position, we would be able to serve X amount of riders more every semester because we are able to recruit more volunteers and we have a higher trained volunteer and we can expand our capacity of services that we will bring. And then from there, you'd have to look at what are the resources required to make this program happen, what activities day in and day out, what would it look like? We'd have volunteer training maybe once a week. When we began the veterans program, I had to write into the grant veterans mentor training once a week, and we served lunch every week. And I had to factor in instructor cost, facilities cost, lunch cost, in order to make that happen, to have the quality of volunteers in order to deliver the type of veterans program that we wanted to deliver at that center. And then also, what are the outputs? What will you produce? Whether it be a number or it's the output will be so many riders that can accomplish this skill. And then the bottom line is, what are the outcomes? How will you change the lives of your clients, your community, the organization, or the world? So that big, lofty outcome of that final output. Okay, so to finish up here, I'm going to close out this, and I'm going to have us look at basically a sample grant. And the reason why I put this sample grant here, and I'm going to have other sample narratives that I'm going to provide for you to have an idea, is when I wrote this grant, I did it specifically because I wanted to incorporate some of the techniques from our textbook. I really like how the author focuses on the storytelling aspect, creating that compelling story that just draws the reviewer in and makes them a part of the process. What I think a lot of EAP professionals don't understand, especially as it relates to grant writing, is that you may be writing a grant for a funder that maybe doesn't even know anything about horses, let alone the therapeutic value of equine interaction. And so we can't get so jargon specific that it's confusing. We have to really create a passionate, compelling story that helps them experience what we get to experience, those smiles and thrills and changes and improvement to the quality of our riders' lives. We have to help them feel that. This grant I put together for a nonprofit that is a thoroughbred rescue. It's based on basically some follow-up funding. I had already created the Operation Therapeutic Warrior program and had sought some funding, and we got it funded. So the program was existing, but this is like second year program money that we were going after. And so I came up with a catchy title. Catchy titles are important. And as you go through here, you'll see it's laid out, and it's a very short grant. It's a very simple grant. Begins with the abstract. Just as I said, the introduction. In that abstract, I want to catch the funder or the reviewer's attention. And basically, you'll see that this abstract covers everything of my proposal. It tells basically a little bit of who we are, the Exceller Fund, and what we do. They rescue thoroughbreds, off-track thoroughbreds, and it talks about how much we're asking for, $950 $9,500. And then it goes into the actual program, Operation Therapeutic Warrior, and what it does. It evaluates thoroughbreds for meaningful careers in equine-assisted therapy programs. Then I have my objective and how we are going to evaluate it. Simply put in one paragraph that could capture the whole proposal, that if the funder wanted to, they would want to read on. I just want to convince them that you need to read on. This is what this is about. So then I start going into my statement of need. So I talk about the plight of the ex-racehorse. If you're a non-horse person, you wouldn't know anything about what happens. And so after that, I go into just basically what happens and then what could be a new solution. I transition as I get ready after I talk about the need, the plight of the ex-racehorse, I transition into this last paragraph, getting the reader ready to hear about the program that we have come up with, the solution, and that is Operation Therapeutic Warrior, that helps these horses prepare for new careers. So then I give a little bit of history about the program, and I talk about what we have been doing, because I need to prove that we've been providing services, because I'm asking for more, so they need to know what I have been doing, or we have been doing. And then I talk about where we are going to go with this and how it relates to this funding that we're asking for. And so as I start laying out what it looks like, how am I going to spend this money, I begin to present my objectives and how I'm going to assess and evaluate those objectives. I'm going to have my methods. I'm going to present a timeline. And then with that, there's going to be a budget, because they're going to want to know, okay, so why do you need $9,500 to do this? And so I lay it all out here with all my expenses. Now you'll see that this is the overall budget, and they're only providing a portion of this budget, because we have other funders who contribute to the overall budget. And down at the bottom I have my possible income sources, as you can see there, so I show that. And then they wanted, this application required an explanation of expenses. So I had to break down and give a narrative. This is called a grant narrative. Sometimes that's required. And then I lay out the details of how I'm going to measure. Are we effective, and how will we be effective? And then I finish up, because this was kind of the order that they wanted it in the application, giving a history of the organization. So this tells them more about the Exceller Fund and how long they've been around and what they do and what they're known for, how they're accredited. And then I also then lay out the qualifications of the staff. And so then there's some other attached documentation in the appendix that I had to include. But basically that is a short grant, gives you a good sample of how I tried to weave in terminology and make it a compelling story. But I thought this was a good sample for you to get an idea. Also this week I have attached a video that will walk you through the different pieces of a grant, just to kind of hone in on, this is the big picture, this is the overview, and then next week we'll start breaking out that narrative and speaking to and learning to develop each of the individual pieces. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me. I hope you have a great week.